3rd. You are here for the Legislative and Human Resource Committee. The first item on our agenda is public comment. If someone is here to address the LHR committee, you have no more than 3 minutes. Please state your name and address, and we do have cards. Lisa, please. Thank you.
All right, first up we have Artur Gadomski, and after that we'll have Dee Jones.
Hello, my name is Artur Gadomski. I'm with the Kent County Office of Defender, and I am here to speak to you in support of our office continuing a contract for indigent defense with Kent County. And for you guys to abandon the plan to create a public entity known as the Kent County Public Defender's Office. Just a couple of things. I largely know that most of the decision has been made on a study published by NAPD. I have read the study, studied it, and quite frankly, many of the assertions made in that study are flawed, in some cases downright false. The study failed to procure any meaningful data from Kent County Office of the Defender in performing its duty. It ignores the issues of our rapid growth as well as our move that we were in the middle of during the study. Most of the assumptions in the study are made on personal one-on-one interviews and, quite frankly, just hearsay. Just to assure you, we do have policies and procedures, which the study does say that we do not. And lastly, as far as I can tell, just so you know, that many of the same people are employees that participated in the study, that the study has said were critical of our organizations, are now here during these meetings telling you what a great place KCOD is. A little bit about our organization. Our cultures is that of that if there's issues, we deal with them as they come. We feel that overly vigorous policies and procedures stifle our attorneys' innovation and creativity in defending their clients. But I'm running out of time, so just in closing, I just want you to know that I am standing here very conflicted. I want to protect our people's jobs. I understand that you have been informed and fed by a rumor mill about issues over at the Kent County Office of the Defender. And I'm hoping that you can encourage Mr. Vanderberg and the Office of Indigent Defense to abandon their plan and continue our contract. Thank you very much.
All right, Lisa, next, please.
Next up we have Dee Jones, and after that we'll have Dan Zlajurto.
How you doing, everybody? Try to be nice about these things I'm going to say. So I look on my Snapchat, and a year ago, I shared an article 2 years ago because my cousin was still killed by an Illinois state trooper. And so I wanted to say, this young kid that was injured by a Kent County sheriff, I'm very disappointed because we've seen what has happened across Kent County. We've seen what police department and across the United States, people getting killed across the community. There was a young man that was ran over by a Kent County sheriff. Y'all need to do something. Y'all need to reach out to that family. Y'all need to speak to that family. Somebody needs to speak to that family and let them know that just because you guys are in the high political seats, you guys ran to serve the community. Your job is not to serve billionaires or trillionaires or the rich interests. Your job is to serve the community. I believe that's why everybody ran here, is to serve the interests of the community, to serve every single office, fair and just and equitable. I don't think you guys ran to serve your own personal interests. I'm tired of this because I've stood up for the community boldly and bravely in front of the planet. You can go see on the highest level of the news they can offer. I've stood up for this community. I haven't gone to sleep for days standing up for this community. I can't tell you how it hurts to see people cry. It hurts to see those families cry because my family got killed by the police. I'm not lying to y'all. My cousin was killed by the Illinois state trooper. There's an article about that in Illinois. But I know there's 15 House bills. House Bill 492, House Bill 55013. The state needs to pass these House bills. I don't care about any political parties. I don't care what you guys identify as or nothing. They need to pass those House bills, and you guys need to advocate for better policing, because we shouldn't have young people getting ran over by sheriffs or no police officers. Some of y'all don't even have the bravery to put your job up, to get out of the seat. Because that's what people that died in the 1960s did. They put their life on the line for people knowing they were going to die. The government kills people for speaking out, for trying to stop diseases, for trying to stop and be peaceful. The government, the federal government, has killed civic leaders, white people, black people, all kind of people of color. It doesn't. Y'all need to stand up and do something, because Kent County sheriffs should not be running people over. Now, what if the sheriffs come and run over your kid or your cousin? What if the sheriff and the police start running over your family? What the government gonna do? You gonna be right here in the seats then.
All right, Lisa, next, please.
We have Dan Zlojutro, and after that, we have Cody Walker.
Good morning, committee members. My name is Dan Zlojutro, and I'm an attorney at KCOD. It is important to understand the extent of the proposal you've been requested to consider today. You are not considering the fate of my office. You are not determining the fate of every indigent defendant charged by this county. You are merely here to determine whether you've heard enough over the last month to vote to approve 73 positions for a new county-led public defender's office beginning operations October 1st this year. Yesterday, our county administrator threatened all of you that if his proposal fails, he has decided to abandon the county office approach and instead adopt a full roster policy. He does this to cloud the decision in front of you. He does this to scare you of what could happen. But ultimately, it's to force your approval. The county plan claims it will double the amount of KCOD's attorneys for $2 million more than it has previously been budgeted. 23 attorneys and complementary staff currently cost $6.4 million. If the county plan fails, the roster already has roughly 50 attorneys and costs $14 million. If today's proposal fails, our administrator has written to you all that he is committed to roster only, which his requested 43 attorneys essentially doubles. He never presented that to you, and he has not laid out what that costs, which again is to scare you. We need to ask who this plan serves best. It is not indigent defendants, it is not Kent County taxpayers, and it probably does not feel like it's any of you. My colleagues and I trust you to rely on those feelings. KCOD is compliant with all state standards, has been doing the work for 5 decades, has grown exponentially since MIDC standards went into effect in 2017. We are Kent County's largest vendor of indigent defense attorneys. We are cost effective, we are sustainable, we give high quality service, but most importantly, we are already doing the work that our clients trust us to do and that they deserve. I request that you all vote no on the position and leave our administrator to decide what is the most prudent course of action going forward. Thank you for your time and attention.
Next up, we have Cody Walker. After that, we'll have Laura Joyce.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Cody Walker. I am a public defender with the Kent County Office of the Defender. I appear before you the second time to speak out against the Vandenberg-Holtz proposal to institute a county office. That is a bad idea. It does nothing. My grandfather used to tell me, and this is slightly cliched, but it's true, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And in this case, the system isn't broken. We have never been out of compliance with MIDC. We've worked hard and been quietly working in this community while everyone else has been prosecuting our clients. We've been fighting for them. People who can't afford legal counsel. That is what we do. The poor, the people who otherwise could not afford what we do. And our representation has only gotten better. In fact, some members of the community have responded. We put out a Google document, and they submitted responses. Jessica Kuipers, a local roster attorney, said, "I think it will destroy the public's already fragile confidence in the legal system." We heard from another county public PD in another jurisdiction. "I am a public defender myself, and my office is run by the county. I believe it is a complete conflict of interest, and the PD's office and the prosecutor's office to be run by the same government entity. I know that from personal experience, it affects my clients' perceptions of fairness of our institution. This will, someone else says, another unknown person commented, this will cause more innocent civilians to go to jail, raising crime rates in Kent County and making it less effective for new families." Jennifer Tallow, an local immigration attorney, says it's a huge conflict for Kent County to control both prosecution and defense, and it's outrageous that the county would consider it. This council, or this board, was instituted and has protected or done what it can to mediate whatever it can govern this administration. But the problem is nothing is broken here. Our system works, and it has. The funding that the MIDC and the local Indigent Defense Committee has given us is good, and it has given us the means to do more and to protect our clients and uphold the values of the United States Constitution. Thank you.
Next up, we have Laura Joyce. After that, we have Christopher Denny.
Good morning. My name is Laura Joyce, and I am the Deputy Director of the Kent County Office of the Defender. I'm speaking to you today about two things. First, I want to discuss the issue of independence. I know this is something that I talked about at the last commissioners meeting in regards to how that is something, our full independence from the county is something that allows us to help create a very fragile trust in a very short amount of time with the people that need it most, because those people have to entrust us, our clients have to entrust us with deep secrets in their lives, and they need to trust us quickly, and that full independence helps us get there. It is my understanding, that there's been there's a, for lack of a better word, a declaration of independence that will be part of the new office. And then there's been talk about perhaps an independence council to exist for the first year to ensure that there isn't any issue. But I say this, is that that's yet another layer of administration that ultimately answers to the county when what you have right now is true independence. What you have right now is independence without question. And that's what needs to be maintained, so the fragile trust that we have with our community, that we've been building and building over the last 5 decades, continues to grow and to build, so that when our clients walk into courtrooms and they see us, they know that they can trust us because we are free from outside influence, from government influence, and we are there to represent them and them alone. We talk a lot about client-centered representation. I think you've heard probably that and maybe don't know what it is. What that is a concept of where we trust our clients to be the experts in their own lives. We trust them to tell us what they want to do in their case because they are adults, they have dignity, and they know what they want to do. And in no way should their attorney's discretion or judgment replace their discretion or judgment. That's what client-centered representation is. Well, that's what's happening here. You have a group of experts in the field, okay? We're all sitting right here, and we're telling you that the way we need to do our job best, the way that we have been doing our job without question, well, because there's never been an issue with our contract, and the county's asking all of us to apply, so there's no question we're doing it well. We're telling you what we need to do that job well is our full independence from the government. We need that. And I'll say it again, and the people that aren't in this room, the people that I stand up for in court every day without a voice aren't here in this room, and I'm here again for them, telling you that the way you ensure quality representation in this county, the way you ensure trust in the public defender's office is to keep us as a fully independent nonprofit. I ask that you vote no today to approve those positions. And failing that, I ask that you move to table this because more time is necessary before you make this incredibly drastic and serious decision that will affect constituents.
All right, Lisa, next, please.
Next up, we have Christopher Denny. After that will be Madison Fairchild.
Good morning, Commissioners and committee members. My name is Christopher Denny. I'm the Director at the Kent County Office of the Defender. I stand here today because all of this has been a series of contradictions. And as a leader, it doesn't make any sense to me for a body to not have considered the people that are doing the work and the expertise. It doesn't make any sense to say that it is untenable to continue to work with an office and then say, but we want all of your people. That is an acknowledgement that they are doing a great job. If you want to use our folks, then you are acknowledging that we are doing a great job and we are doing the work. The concern that this will be, and I know in the materials from the agenda that's available publicly, it says it's basically cost neutral. I understand the local share, I understand the MIDC, and the local share is your part, but that's not all that this may cost this county. I also know the prosecutor, Chris Becker, very well, and I know that he has in the media been asking for more prosecutors, and I also know that if this passes, he intends to put pressure on this body and this county to add additional prosecutors. MIDC won't pay for that. That is something that costs extra. MIDC won't pay for costs that they consider supplanting, which is if you have already services, you can't bill them for things that you're already doing, like HR services, IT services. You can't pass that cost on because you're already using it, it already exists. Those are costs that this county must further bear. So this is not going to be entirely cost neutral. That is something that's not being played out and considered enough. And also, it's confusing to me as a leader because we have, I became the director in 2019, and of course our office has existed for 50 years, as we all know. And never once since I've been the director has anybody from the county come to us with concerns about our contract, concerns our performance, and wanted to talk to us. And why is that significant? Because our contract says you must. If you have an issue with our performance, with us doing our job, our contract requires that you must contact the office, give us a notice, give us time to sit down and hammer out those things. And not once has that happened. So I know this county trusts our office. I know this county trusts our office because I know that we have been asked to expand. We started at 17 when I came in, and we are now at 50. We have been asked to expand. We expanded services. We created revolutionary new services with our mitigation specialists, which is done in a client-centered way and is unique in this state. And it is lauded nationally by the same organization that authored this report. What will happen to that service if there is a full roster of attorneys? That is why they have no plan to do that. And I ask you to vote no. And also, Mr. Vandenberg has agreed to speak with me. Thank you.
Up next, we have Madison Fairchild. After that will be Aaron Phillips.
Good morning, committee members. My name is Madison, and I work for KCOD. If you're feeling rushed, if you're feeling like you're missing information, if you're feeling slightly confused or that you still have questions or concerns about how exactly is this going to all work out, then it is your responsibility to say no to this proposal. It has been framed to you as a binary choice between building an entirely new room in the House of Government or regressing public defense in this county back to a full roster model. You can do this, or I will do that. This is a false choice. The ultimatum before you of the county model or the roster model does not sway us from being here and advocating for what is right and just for our clients and the taxpayers of Kent County. KCOD has a proven track record of compliance with state standards, delivering high-quality service, and adapting to meet the needs of our clients. The administrator has expressed that regardless of your decision today, he will not be contracting with KCOD and is seemingly prepared to let your constituents receive more expensive and less effective representation, all because he wants you to feel forced to choose between the lesser of two evils. However, it is important to note that despite the administrator's stance, KCOD is absolutely still willing to come to the table with the county for negotiation, should you vote no on the proposal. By rejecting the proposal, you would signal to the administrator that this decision is not as binary as he has framed it, that you want more to consider. While he has stated his unwillingness to consider contracting with KCOD, your vote against this proposal would force a reevaluation of this stance, as he knows and we know that a full roster model is neither fiscally or practically responsible. It would demonstrate that this committee refuses to be cornered into a false dichotomy and instead seeks a more thorough and collaborative approach in addressing the county's public defense needs. We have proudly served as a trusted partner to Kent County for 5 decades, dedicated to delivering exceptional service with integrity and passion. As we continue to strive for excellence, we are fully committed to addressing and rectifying any internal challenges within our organization. To do that, we need the opportunity. With your support, we can work collaboratively towards solutions that benefit the most marginalized members of our community. And therefore, I urge you to reject the approval of these positions. Thank you for your time and attention.
Up next, we have Aaron Phillips. After that will be Stacy Piasecki.
Unfortunately, this council is being asked to decide what model of public defense is best for the county. And looking at the report, NAPD never anticipated that decision rest on you. Never. Whoever decides the county model, that decision is for an oversight board. In fact, step 1 of the plan that they laid out is to develop an oversight board. That oversight board would then, looking at page 29, right? That oversight board would then govern distribution of funding, hire indigent defense leadership, including chief public defenders, develop standards and audits. That oversight board, which is crucial to the independence of the county-run public defender office, was to be decided and created first. They would then, this is on page 30, determine if the current contracts with KCOD and existing rosters of attorneys should be revisited, looking at different models and deciding what is best. Then, that oversight board would pitch based on careful investigation, review of contracts. They would then pitch which model would be best. That makes sure that this is a collaborative effort, because this oversight board, it includes government, county officials, members of the local bar, those who have indigent defense experience, a former client, representatives of mental health and social services, entities that intersect with criminal defense system, a collaborative investigation of what model would be best. I hear that an independence council is being created to artificially create independence. Why bother? Why bother? The county is already deciding on what model is best. The county is already choosing to close a nonprofit that's existed for 50 years, and you're pitching that as independence. It is a little late to be creating an independence committee when the sole job of it would be to make the decision that you are making now and taking it out of our hands. Why bother? Why bother?
Up next, we have Stacy Piasecki, and up after that will be Ada Nohani.
Morning, everyone. I'd like to thank you for allowing me a few minutes to share my thoughts, not only as a new member of the board of the Kent County Office of the Defender, but also as a zealous social justice advocate. I believe I have a good foundation in which to speak from, as I spent 20 years working in Children's Protective Services in Kent County, which involved routine interaction with the exact population that this decision is going to impact. In working with this population, my eyes were open to the privileges I have. I was ignorant about the struggles and challenges and barriers marginalized populations face, and that they face at every turn. Figuring out alongside the families how they were going to feed their kids, clothe their kids, and pay their bills was a daily struggle. I think it's important to understand how this decision impacts these people living in these conditions. We cannot allow something so important to so many people to simply become a transaction. To become a decision made unilaterally by one entity because it's so much bigger. It saddens me to think that the voices of those this impacts the most have been silenced in this process Of course, the financial implications of a decision are important, but as elected officials, it's also important to incorporate the voices of the constituents you represent. For this population, having representation independent from the body that has levied charges against them is crucial, to say the least. Being represented by people who are fiercely dedicated to this cause should matter as much to you as it does to them. It should matter to the people making these decisions. For all of these reasons, I ask that you vote no, and furthermore, I think all of the concerns about the way this decision or this proposed decision has been made should lead you to question whether you have the right person leading the county. Thank you.
Up next, we have Ada Nohani, and after that will be Kim Talent.
Good morning. My name is Ida Nojani, and I am a proud public defender at the Kent County Office of the Public Defender. You've heard from me many times now, and I've spoken to many of you individually. What I want to do is tell you what you haven't heard and what we've given you. You have gotten from us new policies, a new board, amazing attorneys, a supportive community, stability and sustainability for 50 years, regardless of what the budget is, regardless of the money that comes in from the state. And you have not, if you have not seen any contract violations on our behalf. What have you gotten from your lead, Al Vandenberg and his team at the back of the room here, Kristen Holtz and Craig Paul? You've gotten no future plan for liability. We are not government employees. We don't get government immunity, which means you are liable if your attorney is negligent in any way. You haven't got any plan for that. You've got no plan for, you've never even seen our contract. You have no understanding of whether or not your actions today are going to violate that contract, and if that's going to open you up for what's happening in Ottawa County now. You don't know. You don't have that information. You also haven't seen any future plan for if the MIDC money goes away. We appreciate the representatives on this committee that have worked very hard to find an alternative here, right? We appreciate what you have done, and we understand you're with us. But we want you to stand up, like the gentleman said at the second speaker told you. This is your job to speak for your community, for the people that vote for you. And we want you to take a stance and say, we haven't heard enough. Because you know what you also haven't heard? Is if the money goes away from the state, which is reflective of a government movement, right? We know that if the president changes, the governor changes, that money may go. And Mr. Al Vandenberg's plan is, then we'll just fire people. How is that going to support your constituents, the people we represent, the individuals who are part of your community, the people who can't afford an attorney? Your plan is to just fire public defenders. Our office has done this for over 50 years before the MIDC, before the money came from the state. And we did it on your very little budget, your minute budget you gave us, and people in our office did it for $12,000 a year as a support staff member, for $35,000 a year as a licensed attorney. They did the work for your pennies so that your community, the people who vote for you, were properly represented. So what are you going to do if MIDC's millions go away and all you have is 2.5 from this county? You're going to fire public defenders. What are you going to do if you go to a roster system? You're going to send the message that there is no public service position in this county for people to come from other parts of the state to get their loans forgiven. Is that a message you want to send for a county who has no law school, right? Who is begging people from U of M and MSU to come here and work? You would send a message that a roster system would mean nobody gets their loans forgiven. Is that who you want to be? We know that system is not real. Do not let him fool you, because you have not seen enough to make an informed decision, and us as constituents deserve an informed decision.
All right, and next up we have Kim Talent, and this is the last card I have.
Good morning. My name is Kim Talent. I'm also a trial attorney at KCOD. It's a tough act to follow. In a similar of Ms. Nojani's position, this county has put forward that if the state funding goes away, these positions will be eliminated. While that might be normal for normal county positions and a pretty regular statement to make, public defense is a constitutionally protected. It's constitutionally protected, and we need it in our communities. It's not like other county programs that can just go poof. Is this county prepared to get sued because it just poofs and gets rid of its organized system? When this proposal was brought up, I'm a religious girl. I went over to my priest to go ask him what his thoughts were on this. And he immediately brought up that it's really important to have a separation of church and state. that our country's founded on this principle of separation of church and state, that it protects our worship spaces from unwanted interference. It protects our religious leaders, it protects our community members, and it creates an authentic and intimate relationship between a parishioner and the religious leader. It's the same idea for us attorneys at KCOD. While we can do it in a county way, it is better when we can say, I have no interest in what these people are doing, and I am protected by being completely separate, and I have no basis in trying to influence you. I am here 100% for you. My priest was like, I have no stake in this game, but I know that my community members would be rattled by this. I go to a church in Kentwood, and Kentwood is one of the most diverse communities in this county. And he immediately brought up that I am concerned that my community members wouldn't be reflected in this. If this county model is accepted and then it goes away, these community members who are already so desperate for help, they will lose that representation and that connection. Thank you.
All right, Lisa, I think we had one more that,
Yes, I just received another one for Tiffany Arabello.
all right, thank you.
Good morning. My name is Tiffany Arabello. I'm a chief investigator with KCOD. I've worked at KCOD for 2 years. I wouldn't be the investigator you see here before you if I didn't stand on the shoulders of all the attorneys who guided me and molded me. I witnessed a black woman become a judge in the 17th Circuit Court. I'd never seen that before in my life. I grew up in Louisiana, by the bayou, never seen a black attorney, never seen a black judge before I came here. Now, when Al Vanderberg came into our house and stated that Ottawa County was successful from their transition, but what he didn't mention was that Ottawa County went from running an office using $927,000 to $2.8 million. Ottawa County had to pay the difference, which was $1.8 million. It's a lot of money. So where is it coming from? Al stated, and I quote, "It's almost completely cost neutral." That is not cost neutral if the county had to pay $1.8 million. Ottawa County paid more than double, which was a deficit rather than a cost neutral. This plan from the beginning was not executed well, it was not thought out, and this will be a nightmare for Kent County and for your constituents that are out there, these people that we fight for every single day. Think about those people. They matter. Al has in his plans that new staff starts the morning, moving in September 30th. So where are we going? Because that's a violation of the contract that they have with us. So where are we going? They're gonna sit with us and do our work with us in the morning? I'm just not understanding why you guys are not seeing what this is gonna do to this county and to these people. People that look like me. Or do y'all not care about the people that look like me? My kids have to come through this county, be in this county. My kids are mixed. They're half black, half Mexican. I'm sure you guys have never been stopped by the cops and had to calm your child down to say, we're okay. Put your hands on the damn dashboard. I'm sure y'all never had to do that to your child. Make the right decision. That's all I'm asking. Thank you.
All right, with that being the last one, we will close that part of our public hearing. Approval of last meeting's minutes. Do I have a motion and support for last meeting's minutes, please? Motion by LeGrand, supported by Pakla. Any comments, questions? If not, all those in favor say yes. Yes. All those opposed? Last meeting's minutes have been approved. All right, our next item on our agenda is from the Human Resources Office, Performance Measurement Review. Amy.
Good morning, Commissioners, and thank you for allowing me the opportunity to present the annual report for HR this morning. The HR team, the HR team includes 17 people who collectively provide support for all county elected offices, courts, and departments all throughout the employee life cycle, starting with recruitment and going all the way through retirement. The board strategic priority that HR's work most closely aligns with is quality of service. We provide the infrastructure that allows our county departments to effectively recruit and retain qualified staff to serve the residents of Kent County. We have 4 different strategic goals in HR. The first goal is essentially to make sure that we're leveraging continuous improvement in our processes to make sure that we're operating as effectively and efficiently as possible. Second, we want to make sure that we're offering pay and benefit structures that are not only competitive with market, but are also sustainable in the long run. Third, we want to make sure that there is a mechanism for county departments, offices, and elected officials to recruit and retain talent that they need in order to provide services to the public. And then last, we want to make sure that the structures and the processes we have in HR support and promote the culture that we want to have here at Kent County. Next, I'll review a few performance metrics. The first is voluntary turnover. For the last 3 years, you're probably aware that we have existed in a hyper-competitive labor market with record low levels of unemployment, and that trend persists today. The last read we have on unemployment in the MSA for Grand Rapids is at a level of about 3.1%. That is about 1.5% below the kind of the normal full rate of employment that would involve just regular churn of people routinely looking for other jobs. So I think it's a positive sign that we have seen a reduction in voluntary turnover rates from 2022 to 2023, from about 8% to about 6.25%. But I doubt that we will meet our 5% goal unless we see a softening in the labor market. Okay, so why are people voluntarily leaving their employment with Kent County? We do ask people to tell us that information in exit surveys. And probably the biggest trend that we've seen over the last couple of years is the prevalence of flexibility in work-life balance as a reason why people would indicate they're leaving Kent County. Only the top 5 reasons that people list are stated here. There are more reasons than this, but I wanted to highlight the top 5. Prior to COVID, that wouldn't have even been on the radar. And I think county departments, offices, and agencies have done a great job of instituting flexibility where it's possible. Of course, there are some jobs where flexibility is just not feasible. We have made changes, significant changes to our time off structure to help promote flexibility where it can't be achieved through either where you work or when you work. Another reason that could potentially prompt turnover is the work environment. It is a more common reason listed on the exit survey. So we do measure our values for people who are coming on board with the county. And our goal is for people who are onboarding with the county to say at about a 90% level that they agree that the work environment they experience is consistent with the county's stated values. We have seen a slight decrease in that in 2022 from about 95% of people saying they agree with that to about 87%, and it stayed there for about 2 years. So we're still pretty close and hovering about that 90% rate. And I think a lot of the work that has been done in the last couple of years to start to understand the culture and to make improvements where they're needed, I think that work is still underway and will pay off. Okay. Another metric that I wanted to highlight is the staffing ratio of HR staff in its This is a ratio that is published every year by the Society of Human Resources Management, and it's expressed as a ratio of HR staff per 100 employees in the organization. I've been tracking this for my whole career, and for the first time ever, we've seen a significant increase in 2023 from about 1 HR staff member per 100 employees to 1.7, and I think this is a reflection of the post-pandemic workplace and just some of the changes in social norm and the changes in the labor market. There are more HR staff needed for recruitments. We're seeing more requests for leave. The pay and benefits landscape is changing faster, so it just takes a lot more resources to stay on top of all of that. So we're experiencing that in Kent County's HR department, and nationally, HR departments are experiencing the same kind of pressures. Okay. Next, I'd like to cover a few significant accomplishments from 2023 and 2024. First, we finalized, and you guys will be asked to approve the last of these agreements today, the 6 agreements that expired at the end of last year. And with every single agreement, the employees voted to ratify those contracts. So very proud of the work that everybody did in support of that. As part of that process, we did make significant changes to our time off structure to improve flexibility and also security for employees. We also added real choice for employees in terms of the health plan that they, options that they have to choose from by adding a high deductible health plan with health savings account option. We evaluated every single job that was subject to negotiations and made market adjustments where the market data indicated it was necessary to do so to maintain our competitiveness. And we also added a different wellness structure and added a new electronic platform that employees would use to engage with the wellness program. So lots of changes in 2023. Another thing that I wanted to express gratitude to the board for is approving a sourcing position which came on board in February of 2023. That position has really impacted our ability to be able to get the word out in the community about opportunities to work at Kent County. They've formed relationships in the community that we didn't have the capacity to do before. And partly, at least as a result of this position, we have seen an 18% increase in our applicants per recruitment in 2023. We also finalized a major HRIS system upgrade last November. We continue work to move from paper files to digital files, and recently we took a couple of steps in that process, one being to implement workflows, and the other step was to start to implement digital forms as opposed to having to scan paper into digital format. So that process continues incrementally. And last but not least, we did implement a new 457 plan keeper in 450 in 2023, which allows us to save money. They offer free financial advice from a certified financial advisor where our previous vendor did not, and they also allow better capability for outreach and reporting. Look ahead, a few things here. New learning management system. We are in the process of implementing a new learning management system, which will it's more robust, it's more user-friendly, and I think it'll help us to effectively create a more effective balance between online and on-site learning and development. Implement wage study for non-represented staff. There is a wage study underway right now, so that'll be implemented over the course of the coming year. Onboard, assuming that this is approved by the Board of Commissioners, HR would have to onboard the Public Defender's Office. Migrate retiree data out of Access. So we have retiree data right now in kind of an antiquated Access database, and we need to find a better solution for that. And then we made a ton of changes in 2023, and we need to institutionalize all of those changes over the course of the next year. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
You do have another minute.
Yeah.
Thank you, Amy. I really appreciate it. Commissioners, comments, questions. Commissioner Ponstein.
Thank you, Chair Burrell. Amy, thanks for being here today. Appreciate all the work you do. When you highlight your 5 points of reasons people may leave employment or what their satisfaction is, government isn't unique. Those things mostly occurred because of COVID, the way we work at the workplace and from home. Do you find that the public sector and the private, those top 5 are probably repeated between both sectors?
Yes, absolutely. Flexibility is really number one right now. It's commonly the first question that employees ask when we interview, and I think that's, speaking with my HR colleagues in the private sector, they're experiencing the same thing.
All right, Commissioner Hennessy.
Thank you for being here today. And I enjoy looking and receiving my Friday emails on the jobs that are available within Kent County. I find the presentation to be really engaging, and it lays out well what it is that we have available. I have 2 questions, but one is, after I look at this and I apply for a job, what can I expect to have happen? What are the next steps that your department would take for me as an applicant? And it may vary according to departments or types of position, but just generally, what can that be? And the other thing is, you put a reference in here that there's succession planning in a program that's going to unroll in May, and I'm wondering if you can give us a preview of that.
Sure. So the first question, you're right, there are different processes that apply depending on the type of job, but generally speaking, the first step is for HR to screen the applications to make sure that they meet the minimum requirements as stated in the job posting. If they do, then that's passed along to the hiring manager for next steps in the process, which very well may vary just depending on the type of position that's being recruited for. To answer your second question, we actually, that comment, oh, go ahead.
I would say go further.
Okay.
If it's referred on, then what can you expect?
Well, once it's referred on, if the position is part of our clerical job family, then there actually are additional requirements. So we have an evidence-based selection process for those jobs. So the applicant would be asked to complete various assessments that allow us to determine whether in aggregate they are a good fit for the requirements of the job. And the goal here is to remove kind of bias and the impact of people from that process and to look at more validated objective requirements for success in a job. So with clerical jobs, that's kind of the next step. Those elements are considered in a much more kind of narrowly defined pool is passed along to the hiring manager for consideration. From that point, a structured interview is scheduled, and the hiring manager has discretion within the qualified applicant pool to determine which applicants they feel are most qualified for the job. In that second part, where the hiring manager is making that determination amongst the applicants who meet the minimum requirements and the structured interview is scheduled, that's pretty common for all of our jobs in the recruitment process for those. Does that give you the detail you were looking for?
Yeah. Is that the point at which then the contact would be made with the applicant if they manage to get through those steps?
Yes, we have an applicant tracking system that allows us to automate certain messaging. So if the applicant is moving forward to the interview process, then HR will reach out and schedule a time for that. So HR does manage the scheduling of that process in most cases. And we typically would wait until, even if an applicant isn't selected for interview initially, we typically would wait until a final hiring decision has been made, just to make sure that, that process makes it through to completion before we notify applicants who are not selected for interview that they aren't going to be considered for hire.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
All right.
The other one was succession
The second
planning.
question? Yeah. So we, that comment was actually kind of, I don't have the ability to delete comments from that system, so it's actually a little bit dated. So last year, we did roll out a new program for leadership development. So this is a succession planning program that is more kind of grassroots, so anybody can opt into the program, and as long as they have the support of their manager to participate, and it provides various resources. So it's a competency-based program, so there are 12 leadership competencies that people would use to measure their performance in the role that they aspire to and their readiness, if this is a position that they're looking to be promoted to adequately perform in this leadership role. So we start out with a 360 assessment. So the participant in the program decides who to solicit feedback from, and the results of that assessment are incorporated along with advice and assistance from 2 different mentors that the participant selects. Those resources are brought into a development planning process, and the participant devises an individualized development plan that is really unique to their goals and like the areas where they might have gaps in order to achieve the next role that they aspire to. So it's not necessarily the traditional like top-down succession planning, but rather it's more of a bottom-up succession planning approach where anybody who desires can develop toward meeting those objectives to be promoted into a higher level leadership role.
If I could ask one more question. As you're talking about this, how, I know that you're working to increase the diversity, the equitable, and the inclusive environment. Do you have any statistics on how we're diversifying our workforce?
Well, this is off the top of my head because I didn't run them in preparation for this meeting. So, just wanted to kind of provide that as a clarification. I would say that the last time I looked at this data, which was maybe 6 months ago, we compared the statistics of our workforce with the community, the working age population of Kent County as a community. So that's the comparison that we're looking at. We're slightly, just very slightly higher represented in terms of the proportion of our workforce that is African American. We're about maybe 4% below the average in terms of Latinx representation in our workforce, and the other elements are like very small proportions of the population. So, I mean, we're, within 1% or so with other categories of demographics. Our workforce is about evenly split between males and females. And we have seen a modest increase in Latinx representation in our workforce over time, but it hasn't grown as fast as the proportion of the population that is comprised of that demographic.
Thank you.
All right. I think Commissioner Bujak had a question.
Thank you, Chair Burrow. Amy, thank you for all you do for the county. I've been a commissioner now for 15 months, and one of my personal missions has been to meet all the administrators in the county and then try to get out to all the locations where the county has a presence within the county. And the purpose of that is to better understand the county and the services that it's providing. And every time I've gone there, one of the most important things that I've done is talk to the employees that work for the county. And the questions that I always ask are, do you like your job? Do you feel you're being adequately compensated financially and also with benefits? And do you feel that the management has been treating you fairly? And I have yet to find a disgruntled employee at the county. So the good news from my own personal investigation is that I believe that Kent County is a great place to work, and I believe that we're on the right track. And I'd like you to keep doing, what you're doing to keep those employees satisfied, keep them happy. Retention, attraction are very important for the county. I know we're going to be hiring quite a few. We have quite a few sheriff's positions that we're looking at in the very near future, and I hope we're as successful in hiring new sheriffs for Kent County, because I believe this Kent County Sheriff's Department is the best in the state. So whatever we can do to continue that reputation, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Commissioner LeGrand.
Thank you, Chair. Amy, I'm wondering if you have had any recent interaction with Higher Reach, that program that came out of was Trinity, are they still Trinity?
Yeah.
But the skills-based hiring, and if that's still an active process for us or engagement for us, because I know not only do you get better retention with that plan, but you
Yeah.
also get better diversity. And so I'm wondering if you can speak to that.
Absolutely. Yeah, so when Commissioner Hennessy asked the question about how the process works, when I talked about how it works for our clerical pool, that's actually the application of the Higher Reach program. Our recruitment staff is currently in the process of making some changes to the administration of Higher Reach on the HR end that would allow us to be more efficient in applying that process. And we're working with the consultants that originally helped us to roll out Higher Reach to do that. Our hope is that if we apply these changes, it will allow us to be more efficient, and that would allow us to expand the scope of it. Right now, it's actually a lot more cumbersome and time-consuming to do those recruitments, and that combined with resource restraints in HR has prevented us from being able to expand the scope of it, but I think we will be able to do that once we make these changes.
Do other departments use that when they make choices, or are you involved somehow in all of those?
Well, the way that it works pretty much the same
It
way
does,
for any
okay.
department that has clerical staff, which is pretty much every Kent County department. So we kind of manage the front end of the process, and there's a banding process. So it involves a personality assessment that is tied to the success in the job. It involves a cognitive assessment, and it also involves a structured interview process and reference checks. So all four of those elements are put together. If you don't necessarily score well in any one, it doesn't exclude you from the process. It's an aggregate average score, and those people who have a passing score in aggregate on all of those elements are passed along to the hiring manager, and the hiring manager can select from any of those applicants at that point.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Commissioner Baker.
Yeah, just real quick, our next agenda item is to approve or to move a labor agreement onto the full board. Just in general, your relationship with all the labor unions in the county. You work closely with them, have good relationships with them.
Yeah. I would say that we have good relationships. We don't always agree on everything, but I think that we have excellent labor relations staff in HR, and they have done an amazing job over the course of the last 24 years that they both worked here in forming relationships of trust with unions and making sure that they at least feel like there's an avenue for an open dialogue when disagreement does occur.
All right, any other commissioners? Again, Commissioner Baker, I agree. I think keeping our employee-employer relationships is positive as we have over the years. It creates a great work environment. I love the succession planning, promoting or growing our own. I think that's important. I think historically we've done that here at Kent County. People know that there's room for growth in their career, and definitely agree with, folks are looking for flexibility in schedules. I think we all look for that. Commissioner Hennessy?
I think I'd be remiss if I didn't make a comment, because one of the things that's always stands out in your reports is how our pension system performs for our retirees. And I think two of the commissioners on this committee sit on that board, and I just want to, say something really good about that and the way in which that is operated.
Yeah, Michelle Welcome is here today from our Retirement Services Department, and she does an amazing job working with the pension board to administer that plan, which now includes over $1 billion of assets. It's mind-boggling when you think about it.
It's keeping employees safe in their future and their retirement, so
Yeah.
we appreciate that. And just a reminder, I know we have half this LHR committee is newer commissioners, and I think my first couple of years on, always remember that there's a wage reopener after 3 years. So I think when you see that come before you here in a few years, you'll be like, oh, that's right, that's in that contract. So they're just not opening that to open it. They're opening it from negotiations from 3 years prior. So I think that's good too. Amy, thank you so much. I appreciate it. And again, I think we have a couple other items on here
Thank you.
that regard your office. All right, next item on our agenda is brought to us by the Human Resource Department. It's our labor agreement, Technical Professional Office Workers Association of Michigan. Do I have a motion and support, please? I have a motion, I'm sorry, by Diaz, support by LeGrand. Sorry, just, I didn't know it was one of you two. All right, Commissioners, obviously this was in our material. Do we have any comments, questions, or concerns? This will go to full board on the 16th. Commissioner Bujak.
Thank you, Chair Burrow. I think it's important to have a strong relationship with our labor agreement, and I'm in support of this today. Thank you.
All right, wonderful. Any other commissioners' comments or questions? Commissioner Hennessy.
Always have a question. Are there any variances in this agreement from what we have had in the previous labor agreements?
Off the top of my head, nothing comes to mind, but there always are a few elements in each agreement that are unique to, you know, the strongest desires of any particular union.
Thank you.
All right, any other commissioners? If not, all those in favor, please say yes. Yes. All those opposed? That has been approved and will go to full board. All right, next item on our agenda is brought to us from the board office. That's for appointments to various committees, boards, and commissions. This will go to full board on the 2nd of May. I have a motion by Teal. Do I have support by Pakla? All right, board members, any comments, questions, or concerns on this? Commissioner Bujak.
Thank you, Chair Burrow. I just wanted to thank the subcommittee that worked on this. I know I've worked on these subcommittees myself, and going through the interview process with all these candidates is an extremely difficult process, and it takes a lot of time, and then reviewing all the resumes that are turned into us. It's a lot of work, so I just wanted to thank all those on that subcommittee for this hard work and the recommendation.
Commissioner Pakla.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also wanted to extend some thanks to the staff on the back end that reviewed these applications before they came in. We had a fantastic number of high-quality applications that came through, and it is not an easy job to put everything together on the back end because we had folks applying for multiple positions. In particular, the MMPC, I want to thank Commissioners Teal and DeBoer on the work that had been done on that as well, sort of piecing together the chessboard of what that committee looks like. So it was a great experience. I appreciate all of those that were part of it.
Great. Any other commissioner comments or questions? Again, I appreciate that as well. I appreciate Commissioner Teal, DeBoer, and Pakla that served on that committee. Commissioner Pakla and I both serve on the Department of Public Works Board, so it's very important that we get high-quality individuals. And this also just does continue, at least our last couple of years, our high-quality applicants we've had for different boards and commissions. It's been excellent to see. It's tough decisions, so when folks do not get selected and they come back and ask us, why didn't we get selected? It's like, it's not that you weren't qualified and didn't interview well. We just had some other candidates that sometimes you just have to make decisions on, and unfortunately they didn't get it. So please continue to apply for these things. Please encourage your constituents to continue to apply because I believe there is a place for them to serve Kent County in one way or another. All right, so if there's no other comments or questions, all those in favor, please say yes. Yes. All those opposed, that will go to full board on the 2nd. All right, the next item on our agenda is brought to us by the Administrator's Office. This will go to full board on the 16th. This is to add 2 full-time positions to the Prosecutor's Office to support Domestic Violence Action Network. Do I have a motion and support, please? Motion by Ponstein, supported by Bujak. All right, this was in our board packet. Commissioners, do you have any comments, questions, or concerns? Commissioner Ponstein.
No real concerns, but just wanted to kind of maybe get more information on that, the packet of what the money will be used for. I know that domestic violence is one of the areas that often lead to death of one of the persons involved with it. It's also a very dangerous position for our law enforcement to go in. Most of the calls that are escalated into violence and even death are normally supported around domestic violence. Does this grant support anything within the law enforcement, or is it just the prosecution?
All right, our prosecutor, Chris Becker, is in the audience today. Chris, if you'd be willing to.
I think, short answer is yes, I think it does support the law enforcement. The biggest thing is, these are advocate positions that go in my office, and the whole idea with the Domestic Violence Action Network and the Domestic Violence Court is that part of it, we're going to be prosecuting these defendants in terms of, going through the criminal justice process, but providing additional support to the victims, and that's primarily what these positions will be used for, is to get them the resources, set them up with, whether it be housing, substance abuse, giving them child support, because a lot of times the offender's out of the house, and that could be the main breadwinner or something like that, but to really keep those victims on board for prosecution if it need be, because that's one of the biggest things we see is they drop off, they'll come out, the first, they call the police and there's a crisis that night, but the next day, that's their child care provider, and they want to drop charges. So, and I'm not saying we want to just make sure we send everybody to prison or jail, but we want to get that treatment and get that person help, and to have that is going to be critical to have the victim on board. And so that's what these positions will be funding, is those advocates to really provide support, to really concentrate on those victims in these types of situations, which we don't have right now. We have great advocates, but they're overwhelmed. So these are two positions right within that to focus on the victims in these types of cases.
I appreciate that, the comments there. It struck something in my mind. I read an article a couple months ago that when domestic violence occurs and one is removed from the home, brought to a safe spot, and this didn't really, I mean, I never thought of it, but there's, I think it's St. Louis City that has a new domestic violence housing for people. And they found one of the biggest triggers is that if there's ever a pet within the household that provides comfort to the person that's being brought to the safe house, that the dogs normally, or the cats, just discarded, put into a shelter and that. And they've created a system where they've put animal pens, so if someone does have a pet, that the pet comes along too. And I just thought I'd throw that out. I thought that was pretty eye-opening, because you never think about everything that person has gone through when they're moved to a safe house and they're fearful of their life. So
Sure, and that is something, I'll be remiss, Sherry Williams is here. She's the new Domestic Violence Action Network coordinator, and that's something we're going to take a look at, is the whole picture in terms of, we're focusing on this court, but something along those lines, because we've had animal cruelty cases based on domestic violence that they've gone after the animals as a way to get to their victim too, and so we've had to prosecute that. So that's something that, the organization, this is one part of it, but the whole Action Network is going to take a look at a holistic approach on everything, and I'm sure that's one of the things we can talk about. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And thank you, Commissioner Bonstein. Commissioner Diaz.
Thank you, Chair. Prosecutor, it's good to see you. Hoping to see you tomorrow at the CCAB meeting.
Right and early, I'll be there.
I'm curious as to whether we currently have or know or expect any resources, not only to help the victims or potential victims when it comes to domestic violence, but also to try and rehab the offenders in these cases. Do we have any of those kinds of resources in the county currently, or how does that work in conjunction with the
And that's what we've
court?
been working on with the domestic violence court is a treatment court model. Okay. So that's one of the things we're looking at. Is it's right now we're working on the framework. It's taken us a little while, but we've got actually basically a 52 weeks battery intervention program, and there's certain phases, much like you go through drug court, much like you go through veterans court. They're going to have phases for these defendants to get them the help, whether it be, batterers intervention is one part of that, but is it the same thing? Is it substance abuse? Is it mental health? Is it, and trying to get those resources. So the ARPA funds that have already been allocated as part of, what you did a couple years ago, part of that money is going to defendants as well. So it's the victim advocates to help to give them support that way, but a lot of this focus is on the defendants and trying to change that behavior and using that treatment court model. It's not just simply going to be, your typical probation. It's going to put them through an intensive, at least a year, because it's 52 weeks, batterers intervention and whatever resources, treatment they need to try and cure that, behavior, to make sure they don't, commit the crime again.
Right. And for that, I'm assuming that once that gets established, there's going to be a need for additional services, resources. Are we expecting anything to come from the state, or would that court office mostly be relying on county funds or county
No,
resources?
and that's, that was mindful when this whole ARPA proposal went forward, is that, I know the county was very mindful, can we sustain that? That's part of, hopefully Sherry's job is to go out there, and hopefully there's, Kent County and, is very rich in other organizations, outside organizations, be it the Steelcase Foundation, Grandma's Foundation, whatever, VOCA grants. We've been told by our partners with Safe Haven Y that there are opportunities for VOCA funds and whatever it may be. So we don't want to come back to the county and just create another entity for you guys got to fund it, that we'll be able to fund this entity through other ways once we get this up and running and show some impacts for these outside organizations. So it's not simply a government-funded program. That's our hope. Obviously I can't guarantee that, but that's the plan, and that's Sherry, we brought Sherry in, and she's well aware of that's part of her duties.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Diaz. Any other comments, questions? If not, all those in favor, please say yes. Yes. All those opposed? That will go to full board on the 16th. All right, next item on our agenda will go to the board on 5-2. It's brought to us from the Administrator's Office. It's the Indigent Defense Positions and Independence Policy and Council. Do I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Motion by Ponstein. Do I have support by Bujak? All right, I would like Administrator Vanderberg to kind of a brief update on this, please.
All right. So in 2013, July of 2013, the landscape of indigent legal service provision changed forever when the state approved the MIDC. That came after a couple years of debate. It started out as a program that would charge county government, where we would have to pay into the state, and the state would then assign counsel for the county. We did fight that hard. What the state ended up approving was a model where local decision-making was still allowed. However, one of the standards would be separation from the judiciary. And the ground budget, the baseline budget was set at a rolling average of FY 2010, 11, and 12. So that was the base year that county government started at with the MIDC. Costs above that incurred to implement the standards were to be paid by the state. And that's exactly what's happened over that time frame. There was a change in the law, I think it was 2017, that did require counties to pay an inflationary increase on that original base that was established and implemented in 2013. But other than that, the state has paid every penny of the additional cost required by the Act. 2017 and 18 is significant because that's when the state rolled out the first standards that started requiring changes in policy and adding staff and also adding cost to the system. At that time, there were county governments that surveyed possibilities, studied alternatives. Ottawa County was mentioned. We did study 3 alternatives for establishing, what is the best way to do this. Kent County decided to take a step back and survey the landscape and see what others were doing in the state of Michigan to meet these mandates. And I think when I started out by saying that the landscape changed forever, what I meant was that for the first time, county governments were responsible for the quality of indigent defense services. So obviously it's in the Constitution that individuals are to have access to legal counsel regardless of their ability to pay. And then that mandate shifts to the state shifts it to counties. But really, it's not until MIDC is created that we have a situation where county government is responsible to meet the mandates that the MIDC creates. So, as I said, Kent County took a step back. They surveyed the landscape, they watched what was happening around the state, what did other governments do. Over that time frame, I think it was 27, 28, there's now 30 counties in the state that have chosen to use the model that we're planning to go to basically take it in-house. A basic reason for that is if county government is going to be responsible for meeting the mandates, then they should be responsible for the management and administration of the operation, which today we're not. I did want to address, so let me carry that thought through a little further. So we get to 2023, the county did, with the help of MIDC did pay for the NAPD to do a study of how best to deliver indigent services in Kent County, which could have been improve the KCOD, it could be a countywide office, it could be a county office, it could be, obviously the roster system. And the study did conclude and recommend that the county should go to a county system, a county public defender office. Now, the study's been characterized many ways. I think early on, I heard the director say that, you know what, we realize we have some problems, so we're dedicated to fixing those. Well, that rhetoric has changed over the last few weeks to, we've been working on these things. We figured out all these things on our own, to now the study's flawed. The study's very thorough. It contains many areas of deficiency. The study says we have a fragmented system, and that does not result in the best representation that we could have if we had a better managed system. I think that to address some of the things brought up today, some of which were true, some of which are absolutely not, I just want to clarify a number of items. The contract can be terminated for cause with notice, or it can simply be allowed to run out. And that's what we chose to do, allow it to run out, for which notice is not required. But I think, we have talked about what our intentions are very clearly since we met with the group in March. Liability. So that was something that was brought up, that we're going to face higher costs for liability. We do pay, the county does pay for the liability of the attorneys that work for the county, and that is, in this case, it'll be covered by the MIDC. The prosecutor. So I've talked to the prosecutor a number of times. The prosecutor is critical of the MID system statewide. And it is true, the prosecutor believes he needs more positions. However, as he confirmed in one of our informational sessions, that will be the same regardless of whether we keep the current system or do something different or go to a county office. He still has that need for those positions. And he and I have talked about meeting to look at a formula that's other than per capita based, maybe a mix of different factors to determine what that might be. But that'll be the same regardless of how this office is formulated. It was mentioned that if the MIDC stops funding the office, then that there will be layoffs. That's true, but it's true today. If the MIDC were to stop funding what they provide to fund KCOD today, there would be layoffs. So again, while that's a true statement, it's out of context because it's the same either way. It's the same either way the office is formulated. I think that it's pointed out that we are not planning to go with the Oversight Council as presented, as recommended by NAPD. The reason for that, I really wondered about that recommendation because largely what that group would do is either done by the MIDC already, if you look at the actual standards and conduct and what's expected of attorneys doing this work and training and all the things that those who manage these systems are supposed to provide. But then there's also the back end things. For example, under that model, the money would go to this group. Well, the state law requires that it goes through the county. And so we called NAPD to clarify that. And they said this is now boilerplate that they put in every single study they do nationwide. So they didn't really evaluate MIDC and whether something was lacking, and so we needed this group. And so that's why we're not moving forward with that recommendation. Also, I think I'm curious why things are so different in Kent County, other than the other 30 counties in the state that are doing this, to where it absolutely won't work here for all these reasons, when it works just fine across the state, and is a model that counties are finding through their own study is the best to model this work on, because again of the changes in the MIDC. I think too, when we look at things like policies, we've heard responses like, well, we grew so fast and we had to take on so much. There are some basic administrative policies that are lacking. One is performance reviews. So an organization that's been in place for 50 years, at least to our knowledge, still does not have a system of performance review that's tied into the system of compensation. Now, this isn't an issue of scale. Good administrative systems are good whether you have 20 people, 50 people, 100 or 200 people. So why weren't those systems in place? Those are the kinds of things that can be improved under county management and administration. With administrative infrastructure that we have HR, we have fiscal, we can make sure that the business of the office runs a whole lot better than it is right now, according to an independent national study. The last thing I'd like to mention, because again, I think I've appreciated the fact that people have brought a lot of things forward, and I guess, so Friday we were notified that there were members of the KCOD that were not in court, as they were supposed to be, last Thursday morning, because they were here. Well, I guess that's really humorous to some, but I did ask staff to look into it. I asked staff to look into it, and this is what came back from the court. So I'm going to read the message that staff sent to me. I received confirmation that several nonprofit vendor attorneys no-called and no-showed to court hearings on the morning of Thursday, 4/18. This confirmation comes from the judge's clerks. In 24 FY 350 and 23 FY 1269, the defense attorneys failed to appear for their client's sentencing in front of Judge Ayub. They did not call, email, or send coverage. Both of these attorneys are employed by the nonprofit vendor, and both were present at the 4/18 BOC meeting. The clients were present in court, but ultimately had to be sent away, as Judge Ayub was forced to reset the hearings to a date in May. One of those clients also required the assistance of an interpreter. Also, on 4/18 in the afternoon, another defense attorney no-called and no-showed the court for preliminary examination in two of his cases, 2024 FY 343 and 2024 FY 519. The assigned attorney apparently asked a colleague to cover. When the coverage colleague was contacted after not appearing in court, they asked to adjourn the hearing and were told no. They did not show up. Both were present at the 4/18 BOC meeting. The clients were present in court, but ultimately had to be sent away, as Judge Ayub was forced to reset the hearings to a date in May. On 4/18 in the afternoon, another defense attorney no-called and no-showed to court for preliminary examination in two of his cases, 2024 FY 343 and 2024 FY 519. The assigned attorney apparently asked a colleague to cover. When the coverage colleague was contacted after not appearing in court, they asked to adjourn the hearing and were told no. They did not show up. The deputy director was then contacted by the court, who ordered the deputy director to come to court and handle the preliminary examination. So, I mean, we had heard things like that anecdotally, chose not to speak about that, but these are real things, and this, having a system of performance appraisal is very important. That's just one of the policy areas that were listed that are deficient. That's it. That's not very quick.
Commissioners, Commissioner Ponstein.
Thank you, Chair Burrow. So Al, just for a reminder of people in the public, whatever the vote of today won't change anything. This takes an act of the full board to engage these, to enact these recommendations.
What you're doing today is voting to add the positions to the office, the county public defender office. Short of that, we would be required to either use roster attorneys or do something different with KCOD. But we have decided to not continue the contract with KCOD.
Right, and I understand all that, but our vote today sends it to the full board.
Correct.
For their approval.
Yes.
We can't add positions as a
Independently.
standing committee.
Correct.
Okay, just so everyone's clear on that. So during the work session, you had mentioned the 4 surrounding cities that also have indigent defense costs
Right.
are positive behind a consolidated to make the playing field even for everyone throughout the county?
Yes, they did write a letter of support, and they have already notified KCOD that the contract will be not renewed.
Okay, so just a couple things I want to be clear on. I appreciate the time and effort of staff of the meeting, which was well in excess of an hour and a half. So if we do go to bringing it in-house and we have to hire all these people, I know Amy was here earlier, and I want to ask that question then, but what is the process used to just educate some of the newer members and people in the public on how this will occur and
Sure.
what will be taken in as a consideration?
Well, I think that it's a normal, it's not a normal hiring process because of the numbers at one time, although we have done things like this in the past. But basically, it's a normal HR process and standards for employment. We have position descriptions, we have requirements for positions, and obviously we need to take the positions that KCOD has, see where they need to be updated, and then the idea would be to move this as quickly as we can. I know there's been some criticism that we left 3 weeks to hire a director and do a national search, and obviously that is something that might be hard to do in 3 weeks. I think certainly we can get a good list of applicants in 3 weeks and keep things moving. But the goal would be that well before October 1, people know their fate. But we do need to do a hiring process, really for good hiring practice, do reference checks, make sure, and that just covers our bases for liability. And it's just best practice to hire people through doing interviews. So yeah, it would be really the same method, but we would do it more expeditiously in order to do our best to get it done as soon as we can.
And then just another clarification. So the information about the Independence Council to receive any complaints and concerns and non-compliance, can you, I mean, in the information that was sent to me, can you elaborate more of, I'm assuming the state's going to have regulations on who has to sit on that council, and because that was the one thing I heard, that somehow if the county takes over, the separation between county and the courts and the system's now rigged because the county's going to be working with other departments within our.
Right. So one of the standards is separation, independence from the judiciary. And so that's the MIDC standard. Obviously, we've heard about a desire to have a whole lot more independence than just that. I think that the concern is that I, or a member of the administration, is going to drill right out into the detail of what's happening in court and tell Indigent Defense Counsel that they can't be hard on a judge, or they can't take on the prosecutor, or they can't do this or that. I have not heard of that happening one time in this state. Nobody has brought one example of that forward. And so I can tell you that, two things. When I would have my monthly meetings with Ottawa County Indigent Defense Public Defender, those meetings were all about, hey, how are we doing with the budget? How are we doing with staff? How are we doing with open positions? Relationship with the MIDC, revenue projections. I mean, that's how somebody at my level manages a function like this. We never had one conversation about, John Smith did this in court. Uh-oh, tell him to back off. I mean, that just simply, in my opinion, doesn't happen. I've not heard it in any real examples of that happening, or any examples. One other thing, just because I forgot to mention it. The other testimony on the budget in Ottawa was false. We did not pay $1 million more when we implemented that system. The same 3-year rolling average and base year existed in Ottawa as anywhere else. Had the state done the original idea that they backed away from, we would have had to pay $1 million more in. That's true, but that didn't happen.
Okay, thank you. And then I'll just make the statement. So, I mean, this isn't something that just came upon us. The state of Michigan has been talking about indigent defense for, well, since 2013, actually, but even more so in recent years under this governor. So, it's not something that we wanted to do.
It's a mandate.
Right. Thank you.
All right, I think Commissioner Diaz was next.
Thank you, Chair. Al, can you tell us why we're deciding to create an internal department instead of changing the contract itself to account for some of the things like performance reviews or things like that?
I think that when you're thinking at a system level, one of the things the NAPD report did point out is that we do have a fractured model, and we're not going to get as good a performance out of a fractured model. So even if we said, yeah, contract's the way to go, we're going to basically contract for somebody else to actually meet the standards that we're responsible to meet, then we would be continuing that fractured model. I mean, our goal over time, it's not going to happen quick, but over time will be to add more in-house attorneys and replace roster attorneys. That will create more of that, I believe, more holistic model as recommended in the study.
So then the relationship to this new department, to this board, would be mostly approving their budget, is what you're seeming to say?
Well, the relationship is administrative. It's fiscal, it's HR, it's all those types of things. I mean, and that's not uncommon for areas that I manage in Kent County. I mean, I'm not in the weeds, I'm not micromanaging. I hire good people that are professional and can run the areas that they're responsible for. Yeah, and I should mention too that we have a healthy relationship with our elected officials. So I don't tell the prosecutor how to run his office. He doesn't tell me how to run the administration. There's times when we have healthy debate. There's times when we argue. There's also, but we basically are able to work things out, we believe, to the benefit of the residents of Kent County.
Right. I guess where I'm still struggling to understand this is that the prosecutor and other officials are elected. I had a discussion with one of our colleagues. I posed the question of, well, maybe could we advocate to the state to make the chief public defender an elected position? And he said that wouldn't make sense because the chief, whereas the prosecutor works for the people, the defender works for that defendant, which I suppose makes sense. But then, to me, the question still is, well, then what is going to be, if you wouldn't be micromanaging, it seems that the decision would be left up to the chief public defender as to how best to handle the department or a case or whatnot. So then how would that chief public defender be insulated from potential interference, maybe not necessarily from you, but from the board or any other person? How is that chief public defender, how do they have the guarantee that they have the ability to run their own department, and say one day when you're not our administrator anymore and somebody else comes in who may have a different view, how do we manage that, or how does that work?
I mean, I think that it's hard to design any system to protect against every eventuality. I mean, I used to get this as a city manager. I would get people saying, wow, would you ever influence the assessor to lower somebody's property taxes? And the answer is absolutely not. I mean, there are ramifications for somebody in my position for behavior such as, unethical behavior such as that. But I think to speak a little further to what you're talking about, we did recommend as more of a middle ground to create an oversight board made up of attorneys, made up of people who do a couple doing public defense work, one federal public defender, to basically be that check and balance for the first year. Could be renewed. If any problems are found, it could be renewed, but this would be an oversight board where a public defender could report any kind of that interference, and then that board would take that up and review it, independent of me, independent of this board, and then report their findings. So to me, there's not anything like this in the state right now, And so this seems like a good step to bring more comfort to people, that there will be some method of oversight to make sure that either myself or the board, it would be mostly administration, but does not interfere with the actual duties of a public defender.
And
in
currently,
court.
the MIDC does that. If there is some type of complaint or whatnot, that if a defender in a county had an issue and had a report to give, they would report that to the MIDC currently?
I mean, they could.
And what is the reasoning behind only having that for 1 year?
Because I think we have government boards that are, or committees that are put together for a purpose. The purpose doesn't materialize, and yet they're there forever. And so the idea would be, you know what, if after a year it's needed, it is built into where it could be extended. If, as I suspect, there won't be one complaint, then I think you review it and you say, do we want to keep this or not?
Okay. That's all the questions that I had for now. Just to say in my mind, I mean, I just don't understand, and it seems like there has to be some state level changes, because I, for one, don't understand how we can have this system where there's all of these entities, the prosecution, the defense is working under the same umbrella. And even to me, even if the only issue is the perception, that is an issue. But that doesn't, just based off what I'm getting here, it doesn't seem like that would be something that would be able to fix at the county level, besides essentially not doing what we're about to do and keeping it independent. You know, seem to be in a minority here, so that's all I had. Thank you.
All right. Any other commissioner comments? Commissioner LeGrand.
I do have comments, but I just want to right now ask one question, which is, Al, what currently we have in office, a county office of defense, what would happen to that department if public defense came in? Does it get merged? It doesn't stay separate?
It gets merged.
It gets merged?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Commissioner DeBoer.
Thank you, Chair. I'm wondering if the MIDC money doesn't come through, are we going to be on the line for funding that department, and how would that work?
Longstanding board policy is that grant-funded areas will be cut if the state cuts the funding, unless the Board of Commissioners reauthorizes the funding. And so, like with many areas, I mean, we get tens of millions of dollars of state and federal money that helps run different parts of Kent County. We have a whole process for when there's a likely government shutdown, where we go through to determine whether the state or feds will reimburse us once they figure their stuff out, or, you know, whether this is a cut that's going to stick. And so if the state did discontinue the funding, then it is true, regardless of whether it's KCOD or Kent County Public Defender Office, there would either be cuts or the board would be faced to raise more revenue, because we simply aren't funded in many areas of our government to simply come up with money out of the air in the event the state were to cut things back. However, I should also note that state statute does require them to pay this money, so they would have to at least go to the level of amending the state statute to not pay us.
Commissioner Baker.
I took notes here with all the questions, and it's getting to be pretty full. So, questions, thoughts. You know, in general, I think that the most important, I mean, the three things that have been most important to me from when we first learned of this question was public trust, independence, and assessing quality. And to an extent, the report on the current office didn't really address those three things. Certainly the community has raised these questions. I think on a gut reaction, as Commissioner Diaz suggested, the idea of independence would be compromised with this. I and others on the commission have sought out perspectives from across the community and learned that in many cases that's not a reasonable concern. that independence is maintained in places that already have this. And so I've always asked for public trust. I really am pleased that we are offering this Independence Council. I would feel better about it if the Independence Council was ongoing, although I guess we could assess a year from now. But I think an ongoing Independence Council that people could always rely on if they ever feel independence is in question, especially 5, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, if we have a different county administrator. So I guess those three questions still remain: independence, trust, assessing quality, and those are questions that I think that we have to. This decision, and I recognize that this isn't really our decision. But we're discussing it as if we have a say. I feel like we need a full board discussion on this, so I guess regardless of what happens today, we're moving this to the full board for discussion. And I look forward to having a full discussion across the board. I can't think of any other issue that is this up in the air that we've addressed since I've gotten on the board, from across party lines, across community concerns, questions, so I guess with that said, if we vote on this today to move it forward, I see it as moving it forward to a full board discussion, and that the final decision would be made next week, as Commissioner Ponstein was referring to earlier. So anyway, there's lots of questions. I'm sure we'll hear more. I think that there are reasonable perspectives on all sides. And ultimately, what I'm most concerned with is that we're providing quality counsel to people that need this service. That's all.
All right. Commissioner Hennessy.
Thank you. I understand the administrator's prerogative to, renew or not renew the contract come September 30th, which is a very ambitious timeline for us at this point. And we have focused a lot on the hiring and the ambitiousness of that particular aspect of it. But what about the other things to consider in terms of, the office space where you put people, the computers, the desks, just, what other aspects of this would have to be accommodated between now and October 1st?
So the current lease for the space that the public defender's office is in now, which is on Vandenberg Plaza, really adjacent across the way from this building, has a clause that allows the county to assume the lease. So at this point, everybody stays in the same place. There's also an adjacent vacant floor that we could lease for expansion. So I think that would take care of the space needs, and technology needs are something we can handle through IT, so.
Is there a cost to us in terms of taking over all of their, what they have in place on that floor?
Certainly, there's a cost to the lease, which we're currently not paying, but those are all costs that MIDC will pay.
Okay, so that'll be, you perceive this as being very seamless in terms of the acquisition?
I do.
Okay. Have you talked to KCOD about this in terms of, how they would perceive this, or how they would handle this, or? I'm just asking, the question, just in terms of.
You mean the change?
The change, just in the physical parts of it, as well as, there's the physical parts of it as well as the personnel parts of it.
Well, I think the physical parts wouldn't change.
Okay.
As far as location.
Okay.
I know that early on, HR worked with KCOD to create a side-by-side list of benefits, talked about things like that. We have had numerous contacts from KCOD attorneys inquiring about hiring process for working for Kent County. So it's a change. It'll be messy. All change is. But I think that my belief is we'll be sitting here a year from now, and we'll have a good system. We'll have many of the same people, and we'll have an outstanding public defender's office.
Thank you.
All right. Commissioner Pacla.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Al, just a couple other questions that came up. So you mentioned that MIDC will pay the amount for the lease. Is there a limit above the local share that MIDC will pay?
It's whatever's in the MIDC budget. And so that's one of the timing factors for this, is they did extend the time frame for Kent County to get through this process. But basically, well, once they approve it in the budget, then it's in the system.
And that budget approval comes from us telling them what we anticipate our request would be.
Correct.
At some point in time.
We worked with the regional director to work through the budget. They kind of guide us with the staff in Lansing as far as what they believe is appropriate. Then that goes through the MIDC, and then it goes through the state budget process as well.
Okay. Knowing that I didn't ask this to get the exact number ahead of time, but off the top of your head, do you know what we currently send over to KCOD as part of the contract? And how that, really what I'm trying to get at is how does that relate to the budget that you're anticipating would be in the new model?
I do not. Craig?
Good morning. I don't have the exact number sitting right in my hand. I can look it up and I will certainly get it back to you. It's about $6.5 million currently that goes to the Defender's Office. There's really no way to apples and apples it because we have new standards that have to be met for the upcoming year in October. So part of the expansion is actually to meet taking on the consolidation from the other 4 cities, and is also to sit there and meet the standards. One of the new standards is actually attorney caseload. And so what that's going to result in is driving up the number of attorneys. So I really, there is no apples to apples number available. I mean, I can tell you what it's going to cost, but but to compare it directly is really isn't feasible.
Well, and not to necessarily compare it directly, but sort of thinking about what are we requesting from the MIDC for the upcoming year compared to what we have requested, right? My real question is there any concern that MIDC would say, no, you can't have that increase?
So our grant application was submitted. The deadline for that was April 22nd. And so we actually submitted the grant application in advance of that deadline. It contains the full cost, which, as I recall, is about $29 million. We currently, our current budget is, oh gosh, I'll get all these figures.
Sure.
But it's in the neighborhood of about $23 million. So there is an increase. Some of those are one-time costs, which will come back down basically to equip that adjacent floor. So again, I can prepare and circulate a breakdown.
It's useful context. I really appreciate that, yeah. Al, when we think about what we're voting on here today, right, and you laid it out really clear in an email to us yesterday that says, effectively, if we don't vote to approve these positions at the full board next week, the alternative is roster attorneys. Can you tell me a little bit about the infrastructure that's proposed in the new Office of the Public Defender and the kinds of support positions that either would or wouldn't be available to that team of roster attorneys, as I'm thinking about sort of the holistic way that office could support our indigent clients?
Well, certainly all the existing support functions that are in the KCOD, we would anticipate bringing into the Kent County Public Defender's Office. So admin staff, mitigation specialists, social workers, investigators, and basically I think that's the basic framework, and we would continue to grow that as needed with the support of the MIDC.
And if the positions that are being proposed during today's action request aren't approved, then, and we're using roster attorneys only, right, then we wouldn't have those support positions? Is that accurate?
At that point, we would not.
Okay. And then final question, if we were to delay this decision but ultimately accept it, in your mind, would that create a potential gap in indigent defense?
It could, and I think the real impact, if you delay it, will be less time, and do eventually approve it, as you said, would be less time to actually hire people, bring them in, and let them know they have a place well before October 1.
Okay. Those are the questions I got right now. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other commissioner comments or questions? Commissioner DeBoer.
Thank you, Chair. I want to thank Al for all of his work on this. I really personally think I would appreciate a little bit more deliberation. I know this is a complex topic, and I would just like to spend a little bit more time. So I do motion to postpone to a definite time. May 14, I think, is our next subcommittee date.
All right, we have a motion to postpone and support, and so this would just be a majority vote. I believe at this point in time, it would end discussion, and I would need a vote on this matter. Roll call vote on this now.
Can we discuss this motion?
Can we?
It is debatable, and it also is amendable.
Okay, Commissioner Baker.
Yeah, I just want to make sure we're clear what happens if this was tabled today. Does it get brought up at the May 2nd meeting? Or does it, or would that be postponed? In other words, would this, if we tabled this discussion for LHR, would it for sure move the discussion till May, or would the county administration have the authority to bring it to the full board on May 2nd?
I think Al or Linda can answer it. I believe the chair of the board, probably at his privilege, would probably be able to bring that to full board, but we can check on that. Or Linda will check on that.
Under our standing rules, the agendas are set by the board chair. Under our regular practice, things come through the committees first for a recommendation. Historically, things have gone to the board, either with no recommendation from a committee if the committee divides equally, or things have gone directly to the board. So that would be within the chair's discretion.
So we don't know.
All right, Commissioner Ponstein.
Thank you, Chair Burrow. I'll just add, I'm all for more, deliberations, but I've been a longtime critic of our standing committees, and I feel that everything should be done by the whole board. There are 10 members that aren't here. If we're going to add to the deliberation, I think we should hear from all the commissioners, not just the ones on this committee, to make this decision. So I'm against tabling it. When it comes to the full commission, if there's still not support, or if they want to delay it, the full commission can do it. But this really is, I don't want to say meaningless, but, if we're going to really deliberate something, I think the full board should be doing this on an issue like this.
All right, Commissioner LeGrand.
Thank you, Chair. I personally don't feel like I need more time with this, but I have done a lot of thinking and talking and doing research, and I certainly can understand why some of my colleagues might feel like they don't have as much information as they want, because it was a lot of work to learn as much as I have learned. On the other hand, I guess if we don't know what the delay means for the process, then I'm uneasy with that, because it's not. I know our administrator well enough to know that his decision is not an empty threat, trying to get us to force a certain vote. I understand that he has made a decision, and so it's other decisions that are going to be affected, but not that one. So I guess that is my reason for wanting to vote today.
All right, Commissioner Pacla.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with Commissioner Ponstein that I think more voices in this conversation are better. I also personally don't have any outstanding questions that I think would take additional time to determine the answers to. So I am not in support of tabling this motion today. Thank you.
All right, any other commissioners' comments or questions? Commissioner Diaz.
Thank you, Chair. I do support the motion to the table, if for nothing more, than to just have some time between the current staff at the Office of the Defenders and the county to try to come to a better agreement, a better understanding, try and see if there's ways that we can maybe change something or a couple of things in this motion, in this plan to ease the concerns around current staff, mostly because, again, even though I don't agree with the plan to dissolve the nonprofit and bring them in, I am on the minority when it comes to that. And if nothing else, then to at least try and more directly alleviate some of those concerns. And I think a couple of weeks more would be useful, but again, with the knowledge that this may still be forced on the agenda by the chair of the board. So I do support this motion, but again, I would personally suggest to current staff that it seems to me like this is a foregone conclusion, and unless something drastically changes, if this motion passes, the time would probably be better used trying to alleviate those concerns, but that's where I will leave it there.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Diaz. Commissioner Hennessy.
Commissioner LeGrand raised the issue about process. So if we were to table today, and I'm not sure, I'm not really supporting tabling, but if we were to table today, under the role of the, county administration, what would be the process that they would, be pursuing between now and the next meeting? I mean, what does it mean in terms of, the process for the county?
I'm not sure if that's really a legal question or more of an Al question.
Okay, I mean, I guess at this point, a decision's been made. If we'll see today with this vote, whether a majority of commissioners feels like they need more time to delay this a month, I mean, what it will do is it will put off processes like hiring, we're already at a really tight window to hire the new director, public defender, so obviously that would be put off a month in an already tight timeline. But I don't see a lot else changing. I have agreed to meet with people who asked to meet with me. But other than that, I'm not anticipating that recommendation changing.
All right, any other commissioner comments, questions? Commissioner Baker.
Thank you for giving me a second time. I have had, like Commissioner LeGrand, I know others have spent a lot of time talking to people. And I've said this from the beginning, the more community engagement on this issue, the better. Building trust is very important to me. However, I also know I've had at least a couple conversations with other commissioners that aren't here, and I think that they need to be part of this conversation, and I fear that we'll end up doing the same conversation 2 weeks from now and ending up with, and I'd rather, my goal is to get, I'd like to hear what other, like Commissioner DeBoer said, I believe in deliberation. I think that we need to deliberate this. We need to be able to discuss this as a whole. And so I will vote against this tabling motion, but mainly because I want to get on to doing the work next week. So, thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Commissioner. Any other commissioner comments, questions? I do agree with Commissioner Ponstein's comments that this does deserve full board deliberation on a matter such as this. So obviously my votes today on both the table, if it doesn't go through, and the decision on adding the positions would be to affirm it to full board so we can have those discussions. So if we do have no further discussion, this is a roll call, Lisa, and you are voting yes in favor of tabling, or no, you are not. So it's a yes or no vote when it is your call.
All right, Commissioner Baker?
No.
Commissioner Bujek?
No.
Commissioner DeBoer?
Yes.
Commissioner Diaz?
Yes.
Commissioner Hennessy?
No.
Commissioner LeGrand?
No.
Commissioner Pakla?
No.
Commissioner Ponstein?
No.
Commissioner Teal?
Yes.
And Chair Burrow.
No.
You have 3 yeas and 7 nays.
Okay, so that'll bring us back to the question being asked. Do we have any other further commissioner comments? I think we've gone through quite a bit of deliberation on this. Again, Commissioner LeGrand.
Thank you, Chair. I want to say this is a really important issue to me. I'm not an attorney, but I've been around the world of defense for a long time, and I know that these attorneys here are not just defending the rights of individual clients, but public defense, all defense attorneys, but public defense in particular, are literally on the front line of civil rights. Because of our adversarial system, they force the prosecution and law enforcement to prove their cases, and they keep our system as honest as it can be. We all rely on public defenders to defend our civil rights, our civil liberties. So I was very displeased by the speed of this process and the communication that has really not been great. I read the memo, I read the NAPD report. I too wondered why on earth aren't we talking about an oversight board when they say that is the first recommendation. And then when I said that was told that I suspect that's boilerplate language, so they went back and asked, and oh yeah, it's boilerplate language. So it really wasn't tailored for our community. The report wasn't, which was not very helpful, and that fact was not made known to us either. So that I had to do that much digging to find that out was frustrating. And the fact that the community, I mean, one thing that they mentioned in their report is to have community stakeholders involved in this process that they said actually in the end didn't apply to us. And so I agree with Commissioner Baker that trust is really important and trust building is really important. And so we lost an opportunity for trust there. So that to me is frustrating. I've spoken with many of the public defenders. I've spoken with private defense attorneys, roster attorneys. I've spoken with judges. I spoke at length with the chief defender of another county. I spoke with someone at the MIDC. I spoke with someone who had worked for a public defender's office in another state. And I'm generally not satisfied with the other people are doing it, so it's okay, or other counties are doing it, it's okay. So I really wanted to look into what this question meant for us, for supplying defense here in Kent County. It's an unfortunate choice to me to have to make this decision, because this decision is not, do I appreciate what they have done and what they are doing right now? That is not what, you know, I don't get to choose what's in front of me, and what's in front of me is a roster system or a public defender's office. So that's my choice, and I don't appreciate protest votes from my colleagues, so I want to be honest with myself and not issue a protest vote here. So who am I putting at the center of this decision? It's our defendants. They're the most important consideration. Are they going to be best served by roster attorneys, or are they best going to be served by a cohesive office? And I believe the answer is by a cohesive office. And I'm also concerned about the attorneys. You know, is their experience, is their support going to be better as roster attorneys or as in a member of a cohesive office? And I believe that for them as well, it will, I know not everyone will choose from this office will choose to do that route. But it's clear to me that they will have better support, they will have more clout with the courts, and this is from talking to other public defenders' offices around the state, that they'll have more clout, they'll have more freedom, they'll have much more options for coverage, which is always necessary and hard to get. Scheduling is difficult. So for those reasons, I am going to vote yes on this. I want to say that when I spoke with the chief public defender, he said that first hire of a chief defender is going to be incredibly important because they will set a standard and a culture for the office. And so I urge the administration, I don't know what the hiring process will be, But this person needs to be not only widely experienced in defending not just misdemeanors, but felonies, but also really willing to commit to arguing with law enforcement when it's necessary, to all of the things, to maintaining a really free and independent office. So on that note, that's the way I see the decision that's in front of us today. And it represents an enormous change. And having seen this ahead of time, I would, playing catch-up is a lot less satisfying, but I would really urge our communications and community outreach to explain this change. It's a really big change. And it's not going to be easy, and it's not going to be fun for anyone. But keeping defendants and keeping defense attorneys front and center, I will be voting yes. Thank you.
All right. Any other commissioner comments? Commissioner Baker.
Yes, I could just say ditto to what Commissioner LeGrand just said. I am also disappointed with the timeline that we've had. I think that when I've heard others in the community have had that report for much longer and have been discussing it, it's not so much that the board needs to have more say into how things are run. It's just that the community we lost an opportunity to build community trust. With that, and again, of our options, I do think it's better to have an in-house office than to have roster attorneys. I still feel a strong need to hear from the rest of the board, and I know that there are a variety of feelings. All of us are talking to people to try to get an assessment of what we should do, and I want to know what those persons have learned. I would like to there have been a lot of questions raised in our public comments that I think need to have an answer. Again, the reason these notes are so crazy here is that a lot of questions have been raised, and I don't want to ask them all here, but it would be nice to have an FAQ put together between now and May 2nd that would include a discussion of whether or not this is going to cause more costs, how independence is maintained, what the strategy will be for building community trust, and what happens to the hiring processes and the benefits and all of these different issues that people have raised. And I think that it would be really nice for us to have this FAQ, and it would serve the public well, and I think would serve the administration well, that we make this decision next week with all of the information. I don't want to be questioned later on whether or not I knew something. I want to know. So I know that this puts a lot of burden on the staff, but at the same time, the consequences, I can't think of many more consequential decisions we've made. So that's where I'll be. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Baker. Commissioner Pakla.
Thank you, Chair. While I don't have a lot to add above what's already been said, I do have a lot of big feelings on this. On one hand, I really have been uneasy with the timeline, both of the information that's been presented to us and with the timeline going forward. There's also a lot of difficulties in my mind about that transition, as Commissioner Baker just outlined, in terms of communication, community trust, those types of pieces. While I've got these concerns, they're not showstoppers for me. Unease in my mind doesn't overcome understanding, and while I wish the process could have gone differently from the information flow, we know that what we're voting on today is not whether or not to keep the contract with the KCOD, but rather whether to create a system that replaces the KCOD or to create an ad hoc collection of roster attorneys that don't have support. In the end, what we all want is what's best for our indigent defendants, which is zealous representation. And we owe it to our community that we continuously evaluate the efficacy of our programs. I can't just rest on history to continue systems that aren't working. So on the same side, we owe it to our public defenders, because there's such an imperative to our community to have the best system of support to them. Ultimately, I'm not willing to play a game of chicken thinking that a no vote today is going to change any of the plans. We've heard the administrator state plans. We've seen the process going forward, and so I have to take the plans at their face value. And I'm not willing to take the chance of having an inferior system of representation, which would be the roster attorney unsupported model, be what comes out of this. So similar to Commissioner LeGrand and Commissioner Baker's comments, I'm voting in support of moving this to the full board for ongoing conversation.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Pakla. Any other commissioner comments, questions, or concerns? All right, seeing none, again, I just appreciate the work that every one of us put into this job. That's what it is. These aren't always easy decisions, but I can be rest assured that every individual up here at this dais puts time, energy, and thinks about these items before their sleep. When they're sleeping, they dream about it. They wake up with nightmares sometimes, and they do ask a lot of questions. So again, I do appreciate all that time and effort that's brought into that. I would ask that each and every one of us, that if we have any questions, if we try to get those to the administrator's office by the end of this week, earlier the better, so some of those questions might be able to get answered before the weekend, so you have more time to think about those. And then, obviously, full board next week, Thursday, on this. So let's arm ourselves with as much information as we can, because it is about the defense, right? It's about representing those in our community that need this service. Then it's also about the attorneys that will be affected in the hiring process and the support staff, like you mentioned. There's a lot of things here that are at stake. So again, I appreciate every one of us taking that time. So we do have, again, I'm giving a lot of leeway today because I think we need to.
Just
So,
a quick point
Commissioner
of order. I
Pacla.
note in the last bullet point of the action request that we need to, that we might need to suspend Standing Rule 6.1. I wonder if Linda, you might be able to give us some information on that.
Sure. Because the Independence Council that's being proposed goes over the December 31, January 1 date, under our standing rules, committees and things like this automatically expire at the end of every year. So if we have a majority vote, that will include, because it's in the action request, suspending that rule, which means the Independence Council will last through
Okay.
next year.
So it's bucketed together with the motion.
It's all
that's there.
packaged together, yes.
Great, thank you.
But thank you for noting.
All right, any other comments or questions? All right, all those in favor, please, I'm sorry?
Are you just doing voice?
Yes, I'm just going to do a voice unless there was a request. All right, all those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Yes. All those opposed? All right, that does move to full board on May the 2nd. Again, thank you for the deliberation. That was great thought-out information and questions. All right, Commissioner Miscellaneous. Do we have any other Commissioner Miscellaneous? Commissioner Diaz.
Thank you, Chair. I also want to express my concern about the recent incidences that have happened in our county when it comes to law enforcement. I know that one of the circumstances involved a Michigan State Police officer, so that's out of our hands, and I'm looking forward to hearing what comes out of that investigation. But the other incident from a couple of weeks ago did involve apparently a sheriff's deputy, and so I'm hoping that the board can have an update on what's going on with that situation in a closed session or whatnot, because it is extremely concerning. Our county has unfortunately had multiple issues when it comes to law enforcement in the past couple of years, and so I'm hoping that this investigation is being done thoroughly. I think it's being done by MSP, I believe.
Yes.
But if admin could have an update for us, that would be great. Thank
All
you.
right. Commissioner Ponstein?
Yep, thanks. I'll keep it brief. I brought up the issue when the prosecutor was here about domestic violence. I mean, we've got people willing to donate money for a lot of causes. The pilot project that occurred in St. Louis was funded by Purina Foods. The two stats that they always reference is, 70% of domestic violence victims reported their abuser threatened or harmed to kill their pet in order to control them. And 50% of the domestic and sexual abuse victims remained in an abusive situation because they feared for the life of their pets. So those are kind of striking things that we normally don't think about, but there are a lot of good companies out there that spend money on worthy causes, and I just wanted to point that one out.
All right, any other Commissioner Miscellaneous? Seeing none, meeting is adjourned.